What myths would you like to get rid of from the mating and dating world? What's been bastardized the most, in your opinion?
All right. Well, the most meme one is definitely body count. The idea that, historical promiscuity is a predictor of bad outcomes in long-term relationships, that's pretty well validated by a bunch of studies. It's just that it shows this same...
David's quoted a number of times, right?
Yeah, so we see that the idea that it's like, yeah, if you're someone who loves casual sex and loves sleeping around, you're going to have a harder time. I don't think it takes a rocket scientist to figure out that, that type of person is going to have a harder time in a monogamous lifelong marriage, right? If that's what they love doing, right? And that
it's
can
just
be
sociosexuality.
Yeah, it's just sociosexuality, and that can partially be measured with, the past sexual partners you have, with the, important caveat that there's a huge difference between, an 18-year-old boy who's, just showed up his freshman year of college and has somehow slept with 10 girls in the first week, and, a 32-year-old man who's had, a few failed relationships, a few, flings and so on, and has got to the same number over a longer time period in different contexts. But this idea that like body count is associated, or quote unquote body count as the term is associated with negative relationship outcomes is true, right? At least based on the available evidence.
The optimal number, it's about 4. I think it's 3 for women, and
in terms of people's preferences when they're mating.
It's like it's a very, very long spread out candy cane. I think the same 0 is as desirable as like 12.
Yeah, it's something like that. It might even be less. It's like 0 starts here, and then it goes up for a second, and then it plummets, right? So it's like between a few and several. Between a few and several is hot, and then after that, it's like, what are you doing? And before that, it's like, why haven't you done anything? But it's worth noting. So you asked about memes to destroy. It's like this idea that this is only important for women, and that this doesn't have any effect on men sleeping around, or it doesn't indicate anything about men's likely personalities. That it doesn't make much logical sense, right? They'll talk about these like pair bonding memes using studies on other animals that have nothing to do with humans, but it's like we see the same effects in men, right? So men who have higher body counts and men who are more sociosexually unrestricted generally have all the same negative outcomes.
But the difference is that a man who is sexually promiscuous is not seen as that's not seen as a negative outcome in the same way.
Yeah, well, the in itself, it's not the culture surrounding it. But you asked about memes to delete, and it's like, look, I think that there's a great argument to be made that maybe sleeping around isn't great. Right. I think that you can say it from a societal level, this might not be good for people. And you can say it at an individual level, this might not be good for people. And you could write, a great little essay that makes all the right points. And I'd be like, well, that makes a lot of sense. But if you say only for women, well, then you just sound like you're a sexist, right? Because it's like all the same points you could make would be makeable about men. And all they have is these trite analogies about, a key that opens many locks, And it's like, all right, look at the data. You're seeing the same effects in men and women, but you're only talking about women. And then also just from a societal perspective, it's not what I would call an exportable idea, right? If you can't recommend, if you're making like a recommendation to people culturally, and it's contradictory in its execution, it's not a good recommendation, right? To say men have fun, sleep around, women don't. It's like the only way that's mathematically possible is if those men are sleeping with each other. And that doesn't seem to be what they're recommending.